Hi, I'm Carla and I'm one of Brighton breastfeeding midwives. I'm making a short video today for those moms and families who are pumping. You could be pumping to increase your supply. You could be exclusively pumping because maybe your baby's in the neonatal unit or not latching, and while you get that sorted, or maybe you're exclusively pumping because that's your choice. So whatever the reason, here are a few tips for you. First of all, what pump to get. There are lots of pumps out there. There are lots of high street pumps, and to be honest, tend to be quite expensive. But there is such thing as a good or a bad pump. So I urge you to ask for advice if you haven't bought one yet, or if you have one but it's still in the box. Because getting the right pump will give you the best results and will protect your supply as much as possible. So try and ask for advice. As well as what pump to get. Something that's really important is the size of the flange. The flange is the piece of equipment from the pump that attaches to your breast. And there's no such thing as a standard breast or nipple size, because we are all different. So most of the high street brands out there will come with a standard size, and what I tend to see often is that they're telling me that the result is not good or the pump is hurting them, and that's usually is when the flange is either too big or too small. So keep an eye on that. So okay, let's say you are ready to sit and pump, and the things that you want to take into consideration is your environment. Okay, it needs to be the right environment. What you want to be warm and definitely not hungry and not thirsty and not too stressful or too upset. So don't think that you need to do it. I need to pump now because it's time to pump, and I need to protect my supply because my baby needs my milk. And there's a lot of pressure usually when it comes to pump and how much milk you're getting. So try and make your environment as relaxed and as ideal as possible. Okay, this could be if your baby is there and is, there's the issue of maybe the baby not latching, or you just chosen to exclusively pump. Do some skin to skin before. Have a nice cuddle. That will set your hormones in the right environment, and they switch your body, switch your brain to get your milk flowing. If your baby is in a neonatal unit, maybe grab a photo, or if you can have something that smells of the baby or the baby has been wearing, maybe listening to a song that you were listening in pregnancy, or reading something that reminds you of baby and makes you happy. That usually helps. It will help with how much milk you actually pump. You might be using a single pump or a double pump. Double pumps are better because they half the time that you are actually using the pump. So if you're using a single pump, ideally you pump for 20 minutes on each breast. If you're using a double pump, you obviously put it at one time and you just pump for 20 minutes. It's important that you do this at least 20 minutes. Pumping for less might mean that you don't drain the breast enough, and then what you get is just the fore milk, that watery and sugar part of the milk, but it's missing the fat. And for moms who have a lot of supply, often they tend to stop a little bit too early because they're getting a lot. And so it's important to do the full cycle. Your pump might have a set. It should have two settings. Sometimes the pump changes automatically, or you might have to do it manually. But usually what you should see is that the suction starts with a cycle that's quite fast, mimics the baby feeding, and then swaps to a slower, sort of more deeper suction. Okay, this does is encourages or triggers a letdown, and when that happens, then the cycle changes to the slower one, which is what the baby would be doing. So be wary that if your pump doesn't do that change automatically, you're gonna have to do it manually. So start with a fast setting and maybe with a slower suction, and then when that has triggered a letdown, your milk starts flowing freely or quicker, then swap, and you slow down the cycles, but you bring up the vacuum. And always use the highest vacuum setting that you find comfortable. That is also quite important to get the most of your supply. You could be also doing, if you've been advised to, what's called an end of feeding pump. And that is for those parents who the baby goes on the breast, but they're not sure if, for whatever reason, maybe the baby's not feeding very efficiently, they're not sure if the baby's draining the breast well. In that case, if you do an end of feed pump, you put the pump after the baby has finished feeding, and you pump for only 10 minutes. So don't do it for longer. It would be only 10 minutes. How often? This is a good question, and it's important to get this right. You want to pump at least 8 times a day. This is because a breastfed baby will never feed for less than 8 times a day. So that's your minimum. Okay, and 8 times a day usually translates to every 3 hours. But and most people will tell you that pump every 3 hours. I like to say pump at least 8 times a day, with no breaks of longer, no gaps of longer than 5 hours. So you can organize your day in whichever way you need to. You know, it could be that you're back and forth from the hospital because your baby is in the neonatal unit, or it could be that you know, you've gone out, you have to do shopping, or you have other children at home, and to keep it so strict that it has to be every 3 hours could put a lot of pressure on you. So make sure you set your mind with the idea that you know it has to be at least 8 times, and no gaps of longer than 5 hours. So then organize yourself however you want. If you miss your 3 o'clock pumping session, then you know you need to fit in 2 closer together, but you're not having a gap of longer than 5 hours. And the other key thing to remember is that your milk hormones work at night, especially between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. So one of those pumping sessions should be between those times. And that's when a baby would be feeding, because that's when your milk hormones are working the most. So that is quite paramount, okay, that you feed a pumping session there. If you're giving your baby your breast milk in a bottle, make sure you use the paced feeding method, which mimics how baby would be feeding. I'll do another video on how to do paced feeding, but you can obviously Google it. But it's a way of allowing the baby to drink the milk slowly rather than just gulping it quickly, and it helps them to work their jaw and facial muscles like they would do more or less if they would be going on the breast. If you are pumping to increase your supply. There are a lot of things you can do, a lot of tactics to play around with the pump. Research suggests that if you finish your pumping session with hand expressing, that will have a massive impact on how much you get. So you could finish pumping and then hand express for a few minutes in each breast. You could do what's called parallel pumping, which is when you latch your baby in one breast and put the pump on the other one and pump for 20 minutes. That's another really good technique to increase your supply if you have a supply issue. And then there is also something else called power pumping or cluster pumping, which mimics when the baby is cluster feeding. I will put a link to this at the end of the video so you can look into it. And make sure you are storing your milk appropriately. So your breast milk can stay out of the fridge for up to 6 hours if it's not too hot. It could stay in the fridge, at the back of the fridge, not in the door, at the back of the fridge for up to 6 days if it's a temperature of under 4 degrees, or it could be in the freezer, in the big freezer, not the ones that are inside of the fridge, for up to 6 months. And the only other really good thing to know is that you only have to sterilize your pump parts once a day. Then you can wash them in between uses after every use, but you only have to sterilize them once a day. So that's a lot of information, but I hope this helps to make it a bit more clear when you're using your pump. Take care.